We are catching up on a game called Blackwood Crossing here at Gamescom 2016. And for those who are unfamiliar, how would you describe it, the quick pitch of this game?
Quick pitch would be, I think it's a story-driven, first-person adventure game exploring the relationship of two orphan siblings, Scarlett and Finn.
It is that sort of relationship between siblings is such a popular theme in novels and books and stuff. It's not often explored in video games. What do you feel it is about that dynamic, and what do you feel it is about that lends itself well to a video game?
I think kind of, your point about it being a good theme for books and film is in the same way it's good for games, in that it just makes for a good story. It's, we actually specifically wanted to target or kind of focus on orphan siblings, partly because they have such a unique bond, having gone through the loss that they've gone through. And it's what so many kind of really good stories and childhood stories that we know and love and grew up with focus in on. So we just, I think lastly I would just really, the reason siblings for me make for a good game and a good story is that you are able to empathize and sympathize with the characters well, because you so often understand the bond, or at least, a semblance of the bond that they're exploring.
It is interesting, and of course this is a very fantastic story as well, but it seems like it's also grounded in sort of this relationship that anyone can relate to, that, sometimes you find yourself drifting apart with your sibling and you have to reconnect and you have to sort of perhaps re-experience why you are sort of tied together from the start.
Yeah, I think that's right. As a studio and from a game point of view, we want to create something that has meaning, is a very kind of has emotion at its heart, isn't terribly cliched, isn't trying to be, I don't know, I guess get the heart racing. It's about kind of taking stock of this relationship, what's going on, understanding it, getting to the root of it. And believing in it ultimately, so that's kind of our intention. And so the fantasy, I guess, just is another layer on that, but at its root, you're right, we've tried to make it a very real bond.
And of course, it all sort of so tied together on this sort of journey on a train, is sort of central to it. Of course, that's a very sort of easy understand that analogy,
yeah.
Analogy, but. How would you describe this train and sort of the fantastic things that are there? It seems like we're sort of stuck in this dreamland of Finns. Is that correct?
I probably don't want to say too much on that, partly because of, not wanting to give away too much before the game comes out, but also there is a real intention for us to allow the player to add a layer of their own
interpretation.
Exactly, and imagination to it. But yeah, the train is I guess a very useful metaphor for this kind of experience that they're on, and allows the world to open up into all kind of crazy and new environments, but that are all rooted in their everyday lives. It's just you wouldn't normally expect them on the train.
So when we're talking about narrative adventures, there is that sort of thing where you don't want to have it too complex, the puzzles and stuff, because you want to have a flow of the narrative. I guess the visuals, the visual design and audio and things like that become even more important then, because you have to immerse the player so that they don't, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right, and is something we were, I guess, worked very hard to try and achieve, and we hope we have achieved it, is kind of allowing the story to continue and to be at the core of the heart of the game, but for the puzzles to help you understand that better and explore that better. So the kind of assets that are used in the puzzles all have meaning attached to them from a story perspective. They all drive the story forward. But yes, we just try not to let the player get too so just sort of caught up in the puzzle and confused by a puzzle that they forget what it was they were doing from a story's perspective. We've always got to try and give that balance between making a puzzle enjoyable but not frustrating, so that you're getting the emotion through it. And I guess the other part of that is using, like you say, animation, VO, music through the puzzle, and giving them interactive hooks that allow the emotion of that scene to carry on moving forward, even though you're doing essentially a puzzle.
We've been talking about this. We've sort of mentioned Finn and Scarlett in passing. How would you describe them as in more detail, these characters that are so central?
Yeah. Okay. So Scarlett is 14 years old, so just sort of transitioning into adolescence. She is she's quite a strong character. She's very artistic. She knows her own mind, and she's not as a person. She's not sort of trying to fit in with the crowd too much. I don't know. She's got a character and a flair about her that I think people will like. She's not your typical kind of glossy teenager. And then Finn is quite a typical 10-year-old boy, very playful, has elements of sort of selfishness that a younger brother has. Has moments where, as a player and as Scarlett, you're finding him a bit annoying, and you'll have that back and forth. But essentially, yeah, he's a typical 10-year-old boy, very rambunctious, very playful. But he has this sort of deeper side to him, deeper sadness that the death of his parents has kind of given him, that maybe, it certainly influences his character in other ways.
Interesting. Could you tell us where you're at in terms of the development of the game, what you're aiming for coming out in terms of platforms, etc.?
Yeah, sure. So the game is releasing early 2017 on PS4, Xbox, and PC, and will be simultaneously shipping. And so right now we're kind of nearing that end phase of starting to kind of wrap up all the features, wrap up all the asset development, and just polish what we've got and what remains, sort of make it as good as we can by the time of release. And fingers crossed. It's all going so well.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks ever so much. Thank you.
You're lucky you don't remember.
You wouldn't say that if you knew.
Can't you remember them at all?
No.
They loved you very much.
I hope so.